Welcome to the Kolbe Cast, episode 76. Glad you could join us. As our Kolbe students prepare for finals week, Bonnie sits down with NHS officers Martina, Josephine, and Claire, along with lead advisor Mrs. Mammola. In addition to discussing the newly formed chapter of the National Honor Society and the peer tutoring program that they offer, these young ladies offer their thoughts on everything from study tips to self-care to maintaining perspective on the exams. We hope that our students will benefit from this sage advice as they wrap up their first semester. But just as importantly, we hope that you will enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, liturgical musician, popcorn and podcast fanatic, and Kolbe homeschooling mom to 4 lads and lasses of middle and high school age.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
And just like that, or maybe not, we have come to the last few weeks of the first semester, which means finals are just around the corner. We thought this would be an ideal time to introduce the officers of Kolbe Academy's new chapter of National Honor Society to our listeners, hear about how this organization serves the Kolbe community, and get some suggestions for approaching finals with confidence and calmness of spirit. Stephen and I are joined by Martina, Josephine, Claire, and NHS advisor Mrs. Jenny Mammola, with whom I had the pleasure of conversing on episode 46, Language Lab. I'll link that episode in the show notes. Welcome, ladies, to the Kolbe Cast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you. Mrs. Mammola, I'm so happy to have another chance to visit with you and find out more about NHS, as the NHS chapter's existence at Kolbe is an exciting recent development since we first spoke. Let's get to know these officers a bit first, though. Martina, let's start with you. I've been impressed with how you've conducted the induction ceremonies, meetings, and chapter functioning as president of the chapter. Would you tell us a bit about yourself and your Kolbe experience?
Thank you. So I'm in 11th grade. I've been with Kolbe for as long as I remember, to be honest. I probably started taking online courses fully freshman year, but I started a little bit in 8th grade year. Yeah, I love sports. I love Kolbe so much, and I feel so honored to be up here right now and to represent Kolbe.
Good deal, good deal. Vice President Josephine, tell us about yourself and your Kolbe experience, and what types of things does the Vice President do for the chapter?
So I am Vice President Josephine, and as the Vice President, my job is a little bit more behind the scenes. Martina is the face of the NHS. She's the one that comes up with all of the crazy big ideas, and I'm the one that will maybe kind of say, oh, okay, yeah, that will work, and I'll kind of say, okay, maybe we'll work with this, but maybe not that. I kind of try and keep her down to earth. I try and think of the logistics behind it. If she isn't able to get to a meeting or conduct any ceremonies or anything along those lines, I'm her stand-in, according to the vice president role. I do work behind the scenes more than she does. So I've been with Kolbe. My family's been working with Kolbe for a few years. We've been doing it. I've specifically did it 10th, 11th grade. I'm 11th grade now. Yep, my family really loves Kolbe. It's great that we can have an education that we can put our own subjects in, change it a little bit to make it fit for our family specifically, and also still have that really Catholic background that you don't have anywhere else. Unlike Martina, I haven't done any online classes. I'm almost completely from the book. So I come from a different area than she does, which makes it easier for us to represent a lot of the different students in all of their ways of approaching Kolbe. Kolbe's great. Kolbe does a really great job. I'm really glad to be helping here.
I think that's really neat. You were mentioning that before we started recording about how NHS is bringing together the traditional school home students and the online students and the mix, bringing everyone together. I think that's really, really neat. Okay, Claire, I feel a special kinship with you as a secretary, as that is a role I tend toward myself in many of the organizations that I'm active in. What about that office appeal to you? And what else would you like us to know about you?
So I wanted to be the secretary for the NHS because in other clubs that I've been in other organizations like you, I've also tended towards the role of secretary. So I'm also in my local 4-H club, and I'm the secretary for that. And before coming to NHS as the secretary of the 4-H club, I just had a great time, organizing things behind the scenes, taking attendance and notes, and really the more logistic side of running things. And that's what I do for the NHS as well. So every meeting I take attendance and keep track of who's here. For peer tutoring, I keep track of who's done which sessions and how many hours they've logged. I write notes for every meeting just so that we know we have a running record of what's been going on. And this is my 4th year with Kolbe. So I've been doing it from 8th to now 11th grade. Like Martina, I've done mostly online classes because I really like being able to connect with my fellow students in that way. And I really love the flexibility that Kolbe gives me with my schedule and the way that I can shift things around if I need to. Like if I need an extra day for homework, I can just not schedule any classes that day at the beginning of the year. So it's really great to have that flexibility.
Lots of important work happening that we don't see, but everyone tends to notice when it doesn't get done. But so it's all very valuable work happening in the background. The backstage dimension is. I mentioned that before, how much I enjoy the backstage perspective, and it's neat to see all the things that come together that way. Great. It seems like you all make a really great team together. It's been fun watching you guys interact as we've been getting going with this recording today, and it seems like you're already off to a great start. So, Mrs. Mammola, I'd love to get the scoop on Kolbe's new NHS chapter. Can you tell us how it came to Kolbe and some particulars about NHS? I'm not terribly familiar with the organization, so I'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. Yeah. I guess it was last summer, Mrs. Langle asked me if I'd be interested in starting a chapter. It was her idea, not mine. But she asked me if I would be the person to organize it and get it started. So I had to find out a bunch of things on the back end that I didn't know. I was a member of NHS in high school, but that was a really long time ago. And I also don't remember it being such an elaborate process to get in. I just remember being like, hey, you want to be in NHS? Sure, here we are. And then I saw with my own son, which was kind of some insider info, my son was inducted into NHS at his high school last spring. And I saw the process he went through. And I was like, okay, so there's a whole thing. This is a big thing. So I had to do the research and find out what all we needed to make it happen. And then with Mrs. Langle and then also our NHS Faculty Advisory Board, we had to create some bylaws and sort of figure out what we thought a Kolbe student needed to have in order to be eligible for NHS. And because we're such a unique school, it's been a little bit of a challenge to apply some of the normal NHS rules to our school. So, like one of the first things in eligibility is that they're a full-time enrolled student. Well, that doesn't mean the same thing for a Kolbe student as it does for a brick and mortar student.
Right.
So we had to decide like what is full-time and, does that include the homeschooling students as well? And we decided we did want it to include the homeschooling students, which I'm so glad because we got Josie. And then also it is so great to meet all these other students that I would not have otherwise and that they would not have otherwise. So it really expanded and grew the community. And then at that point, we just started trying to get our first class of people. And these young ladies all checked on their application that they'd be willing to be in leadership. And so we went through a super quick election because I needed them ASAP so that they could do the first induction. And they really stood up and took over, and it's been awesome. And it's just fun for me as a teacher. When you teach French, you teach a really small population of the student body typically. So for this, it's nice for me to get to know all these other students from the Kolbe world. It's like students whose names I'd heard. I knew they were good. You hear things from other teachers, or you see in the newsletter students who are doing really well in different areas. And so it's fun to actually meet them in person. And I've just been so impressed with the NHS students. I mean, they really could organize. They could take over Kolbe. They could run it. I mean, I'm telling you, like I've taught Claire for 4 years, so I know Claire pretty well. I wish Claire could run my life. Like I would trust her. She's so organized. I would trust her with anything, to be honest, at this point. So nice for me to have Claire step into. But I feel like they're all like that. It's just so dependable, so smart, and just like so respectful You ask them to do something, yes, I'm on it. And if they can't, it's a massive apology and an explanation as to why. I mean, they're just wonderful, wonderful kids. So I feel really blessed to be a part of it.
Fantastic. It looks great from what I've seen of it. Thanks in great part to you ladies and your capable leadership. That's great. It's off to a great start. And you're setting a great example for those who will follow you. You mentioned something about a faculty advisory board. What's that about?
So NHS, the organization, requires you when you're founding a chapter, is that the right verb? To have a certain amount of advisors. And so I just put it out there to all Kolbe faculty, if anybody would be willing to volunteer their time. It's completely voluntary for all of these teachers. And it's Mrs. Doucette, Mrs. Hoxie, Mrs. Treat, and Mrs. Prudlow. And Mrs. Langle also helps a lot with everything that we do. And so they have taken a part in writing the bylaws, that we had to vote on the bylaws. And so that was a whole process. And then also they are part of the selection process. Those teachers help me comb through all the applications and make sure that everyone has what they need as far as recommendation letters and the essays that they write, the students write when they apply. And then they help vote on whether or not a student should be invited to NHS. So they're really important. They're super important, and they volunteer their time. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time to volunteer. It's more than just some other club moderator type thing. So I'm super grateful for them as well. And one other thing I wanted to say, and I think should be said, is that I just think it's awesome that Kolbe students are finally getting recognized in a national organization. I think that because of our setup, it's been, we don't always get to have everything, all the honors and recognitions that a brick and mortar student just has handed to them. That's so easy. We have to, as a school, we had to work for it. We had to make it happen. And I think these students really deserve that recognition and that honor and to belong to a national organization and just put Kolbe Academy on the map as well. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Well, I know there's been a lot of work that has gone into it, and a lot of work continues. And you were mentioning the selection process. So first, students are invited who meet certain criteria, right? And then they submit applications which are reviewed. And then from those applications, invitations are extended. To have that roughly somewhere in the ballpark about right, the process?
That's pretty much it.
Okay. So in addition to the academic record that the students have, there are some other dimensions to the eligibility for NHS. What can you tell us about those and kind of how those translate into how the NHS chapter serves the Kolbe community?
So the NHS really emphasizes scholarship and service, but then there's 4 total. So it's scholarship, service, character, and leadership. So I know that one of the big goals of the national organization is to train them in leadership skills and to encourage them to serve their community. And then also obviously to honor and recognize their academic achievements, but also promote academic achievement. So when our application, we're asking them to they have to have a 3.5 GPA, and they have to be what we consider a full-time Kolbe student, which means you're enrolled in 4 Kolbe courses per semester. And then they also have to give us evidence of the different extracurricular activities they've done, any kind of leadership roles that they have had. So we see that they're involved in their community. They do things outside of school. And then we also ask for recommendations from different people in their lives. We were looking for someone who could speak to their academic achievement, someone who could talk about their leadership skills, and someone who could talk about their spiritual development and growth. And so students submitted recommendations from all over, people, many, many different types of organizations in their lives. I heard from Kolbe teachers, certainly, but also there were some parish priests and some youth group leaders and sports coaches, all over. And these students are definitely involved in their communities. One obstacle some of them had was COVID, like just trying to get those recommendation letters because they hadn't been able to participate in some of the things they normally would have, or they couldn't get a hold of certain people because COVID stopped everything or people had moved or whatever. So we had definitely had some allowances for some of that. And then they also have to write an essay just talking about how they in their lives value scholarship and leadership and service. And so we review all of that when it comes in. So we are really looking for the whole package. We're looking for someone who's not just, an achiever academically, but who really wants to serve their community and serve Kolbe specifically, and who's going to be a good example for the rest of the students. We really want the NHS students to be the face of Kolbe, and we have an awesome selection. So that's nice.
And along with these ladies that we are getting to visit with today, all of them actually are active in the peer tutoring program that has begun this semester, and that is how they're serving the Kolbe community so far with it sounds like plans to expand into other areas, but the peer tutoring program is off to a great start, I hear. Josephine, let's hear about the peer tutoring program.
Okay, well, for the peer tutoring program, one of the things you have to do to be involved in the NHS is help the other students in Kolbe Academy. In areas they may be struggling with. We have 3 rooms that we will use, 2 for the purpose of peer tutoring. We have a humanities room, we have a math and science room, and a language room.
And by rooms, you mean like Adobe Connect rooms, like classrooms that the online classes are conducted in, right?
Correct. Right.
Yeah, okay.
I specifically work in the humanities room whenever I can because those are my strengths. So we'll have kids come in. There will always be 2 NHS members there to answer their questions. When they come, we do ask them to bring a specific question, maybe a quiz that they completed and they maybe missed something on that, and we'll go over that specifically with them.
It's really nice because we have I think about an hour and a half per session. So there's one Monday, one Friday. And so it gives students the opportunity to just hop in. If they have any questions, hop out. So we just have this time span and they can just come in anytime within that. So if I was a student, I would take advantage of that because I would have loved that freshman year. So I'd be there every day.
And it's so regular that people can count on it. They know it's coming.
Exactly, yeah.
I've seen people bring in essays that they wanted us to proofread, spot check. A couple of people with concept problems in the math and science room. All sorts of questions that you just need resources for and you can't find. Maybe your mom isn't good at math and you need someone to kind of go over that, which that's what we want to do. We want to be there to help these guys answer their questions.
Super. It seems like it got off to a good start. Are you seeing more folks coming as the weeks progress? Yes and no.
I think Friday's the slow day. Fridays, and I think we're going to have to change it because I don't know that Friday is really serving the community in the way that we hoped it would. I've seen a lot. I do feel like Monday is pretty consistently busy. Foreign language, we're always left out in the cold. Claire's in there a lot because I asked her to because I specifically wanted my French students in there, and I'm like, and I even gave them points for going. And I know some other teachers have been trying to incentivize that, but yeah, I think that we may have to adjust. But we've only been running it for what? I don't even know, a couple months max. So we knew there would be trial and error and trying to figure out what helped the community best, what people were looking for. And even today in my homeroom, I was pushing it again. And some of them are afraid, or they say, what if I don't have a specific question? So I was trying to help them figure out how to come in and what to do, even if they can't think of one specific question. So it's a learning process.
I do say that although it's better if they bring in a specific question, just if you need help with a concept or you just don't get something, come in and sometimes we'll still be able to help you. We can give you an idea for a study tip, go over vocabulary lists better. If you're not getting something, come in and we will help you. Okay, it's I'm the oldest in my family. I'm like the big sister. I'll be a big sister to everybody here that doesn't get it. Just come in and I will do my best to help you. You just have to come in. That's all you have to do.
Sweet.
And we're all we all been in their place too. I remember being a freshman, panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna get through this semester. So it's we've all been where you are, and we're still going through this as well. So we can go through it together. So it's nothing to be ashamed of either.
I think that's one of the great strengths of the program too is that all of you have been, you're walking the same road. You might be a little farther down the road, but you can remember. Well, there might be folks listening, students listening, and families listening to this episode right now, getting ready for finals in that very place, Martina, are like, what's happening with finals? Finals are staring me down right now. So that's why we wanted to time this episode the way we are. And so thinking about students for whom this is their first Kolbe finals week they're approaching, or even those of you it's not your first Kolbe finals week, but here it is again. I'd love to hear how you guys approach finals week, some study habits that you all have cultivated over the years, how you approach things, what you might offer to students and families who are supporting their students approaching finals week. Claire, would you want to start that one?
Sure.
You up for that?
Yeah. So something I would definitely recommend is planning out which finals you're going to take on which days, just that you know what to study for first, and you definitely know what you're going to do in the upcoming days. Otherwise, it's kind of like, oh no, do I want to take literature or math today? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I would also recommend maybe planning to do more finals per day than you would maybe want to, just so that in case something happens later on in the week and you find yourself maybe without internet, or there's a big storm and you can't get onto your computer, then you've already done your finals, so it's not a big deal. And then as for studying, something that I have found super helpful is Quizlet, and I feel like a lot of people use that website. But something that I love to do is, for some classes, I will make Quizlets during the class. So key information that comes up on slides, I'll just type something into Quizlet really quick so that I know specifically what was covered in class. And then when finals week comes around, I'll just open a specific Quizlet from a certain class and say, okay, in week 3, we were covering this, and this is everything the teacher said. And I found that that's pretty useful in my studying.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Everything Claire said is so true. Approaching finals week, I would try to get the hard classes done first, because I think there's definitely one year where I put all the hard ones last, and that was like not good at all, at all. So I learned from that mistake. And then also, like she was saying, like try to have like Thursday open for like if anything happens. And then I would say for like reviewing, I know this is not going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think the best way, to be honest, to prepare for your exams is just to really focus in your classes every single week and into the lecture itself. Because to be honest, that's where I learn the most, when it actually sets into my mind. Because so many times it's so easy to like drift off and be like, oh, there goes the teacher again talking about something, and then before you know it, like 3 weeks have passed and you're completely lost. So like that's like probably 80% of like how I know the information for the finals. But of course, there's times when we are going to like drift off and lose focus. So overall, what I do for my finals is I actually go like weekly per class to see the information we went over, and I write it out into a document, like all of the main information we whether discussed in class or read. So in the process of writing it down, you can remember it again, or you get it like back in your head. Yeah, usually I like also for review week to like study one class per day. That also doesn't turn out well sometimes, so like I'm still trying to figure that out, whether it's a good idea or not, but this is what I've been doing, and so far it's worked pretty well. So
good deal. Josephine, what about for you? What works for you?
So when you have finals coming up, Claire and Martina talked about the academic side, how you're studying. Very true. You want to be paying attention to all your classes, be making all your notes. Yes, I'm going to say it again after Claire said it. Write what you are doing so far before you do it. Schedule it out so you know 3 weeks before when you're doing a test. So the week before, you're not trying to cram everything into your head. Write it down so far before and put it in a prominent place where you're going to look at it and you're going to know when you're doing it. Beyond that, you're also going to want to be taking care of yourself during finals week, and it doesn't sound like it should be interesting, but it is. Don't pull all-nighters. Make sure you're studying in a normal fashion. So you wake up in the morning, you review your homework, you look at the outlines you took, you do all that. You go and you eat a normal balanced meal. You stay hydrated. You keep yourself healthy. Because if you're just sitting and trying to cram all this information into your head, you're gonna not be able to focus at all at the end of the day, and it's not gonna make you happy. And you will you will not do well in your finals. I can promise you that. You need to stay focused, but you also need to keep yourself physically prepared to be taking your finals.
Very well said.
I totally agree, because I think a lot of times we keep things stuck in our head and then we panic. It's like, no, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? There's so many things to do. And so the best thing I found is to just write it down. I always have like the notes on my computer or in my phone. And so I write down like a schedule, like hour to hour, and be like, okay, is this practical or should I shift it over there? And so by doing that, even just writing it down in general, like, okay, this is what I have to do. What have I done? It helps so much. And also to remember, like, worst case, if I fail it, I look at what I did wrong. Hopefully I do better next time. I'm going to study harder. So like, again, it's not going to be the end of the world. We've all been there where like, unfortunately, we didn't do so well in an exam. You learn from your mistakes, you move on. Like, that's the worst case scenario. You're not going to die or anything. Like, you're not going to not have a house or a family. So it's like important for me also to like put things in perspective as well.
Right.
I would
So
like
true.
to add on to that. That's very important for those scrupulous students out there. I know I myself am a very scrupulous student. I have to think about things that happen, and if something doesn't go right, I can get stuck on it. So for all you scrupulous students out there, if, as Martina said, you fail something, you don't do something right, you can't get stuck on it. You do have to study it again, and just be aware that it's not the end of the world. There are other areas that you're good at. Don't get stuck on it. Please don't get stuck on it.
So well said. So worth noting. I'm so glad that came up. That's really important to note. And the ways of taking care of yourself and to make it practically through the week, that those are all great. I'm really curious, Josephine, with your offline subjects that you were working on, when you were approaching your finals, since you're not taking them according to the online school's calendar, does that look any different to you, or do you have anything else that you do that hasn't come up yet in preparing for those?
Well, in that respect, I do have a lot more flexibility even than someone who's learning remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to work ahead. I like to have my information down. I do follow a strict schedule. I have an hour slot where I'll do a subject for a while. I'll move on to my next subject, and I have homework at the end of the day. It can't be too flexible, because if it's too flexible and you're like, oh, well, I'll do my studying for all of Spanish on Friday, then you're never going to do Spanish. And then on Friday, you're going to try and cram everything, and you're going to be like, wait a second, I didn't learn this.
True.
What's that word? It's going to be so confusing. So I do like to work ahead, get all my information done, but I try and keep from cramming as much as I can.
It's nice to have that whole picture. When you have the homeschool course plan, you can look and see kind of how the work is spaced out and then kind of work backward from there. That's great. Mrs. Mammola, from a teacher and mom perspective, what do you have to say to families and students preparing for finals? Do you have any thoughts to add to these?
They all have awesome ideas. I always tell my students to schedule things out and plan ahead, of course. I guess the last thing I'll say is, reach out to your teachers, go straight to the source. Don't be afraid to ask them, like, how should I study for this? Especially if you're feeling overwhelmed. Most of them will tell you in class already, but in case that didn't stick, go ahead, email that teacher, schedule office hours, or go to office hours that they offer, and just try to, ask. Just don't be afraid to ask. I find so many students are just afraid to ask. And I'm always trying to say, don't be afraid. That's my whole job. My whole job is to communicate with you. Nothing's supposed to be a secret. It's not a trick. This is just you showing me what you've learned. It's a showcase. Who is it? Oh, my son's teacher calls it a celebration of learning, which I thought was so cute. And then if it was a quiz, what was it? I think it was a fiesta. So he made it so cute.
There we go.
It was like a fiesta of knowledge or celebration, which I thought was great. I thought it was a great term to use. So you puts it in much more positive light, right? This is not a trick. This is not mean. This is me. I just want to see what you can do, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, it's tempting to look at the week for the online finals and think, oh, I have the whole week to take them, but things happen. I like that advice very much, to schedule it out and plan to sort of front load at the beginning of the week. And there's such that sense of accomplishment when you work through them and you find yourself with however many you have to take, and you're more than halfway through and you're almost there, and to celebrate getting that last one submitted, but especially when you feel like you've been able to kind of pace yourself and take care of yourself and eat well, sleep well, exercise, all those things that keep you functioning as you need to. It's yeah. I like your point too, Martina, about learning from the mistakes if they don't go as well as you hope. Sometimes that is the material that I have learned the best. The stuff that I didn't do very well the first go round, I learned it so much better the second
Yeah.
time through. Yeah.
But we're here to learn, so it's like,
Right.
it's obvious
Yep.
that we're not going to get it right away. So just to keep that
Absolutely.
in perspective, we're not coming here like already masters in this specific subject. So it's good to keep that into perspective.
Absolutely. That is really important. And I'm glad the point about scrupulosity came up, and perfectionism is right there with it, that sense of having to know everything straight away and get everything perfect. Those things kind of get in the way of the actual learning and showing what you know, doesn't it? I could go on and on about that, which I will not do. So I love how you all phrased all the pointers on all the ways to have a successful finals week. So you mentioned Quizlet. Are there any other study tools that you guys like to make use of? I love also the recommendations over and over to write things out. That's been proven time and again, right? That the writing of it, the physical writing, does so much for us to help us retain information and really own it.
I believe Quizlet is maybe the same thing, but I use flashcards a lot whenever I can. Even for history characters, I'll write the name of some historical character and write in parentheses when he lived, or an important date that needs to be associated with that character, and just do a brief bio underneath them, and just try and memorize that. It works well for me. It will work well for other people. It may not work well for everyone. So I use flashcards whenever I can.
Okay.
Another technique I would say as well, because usually after I make that list, I usually give it to like one of my parents or a sister, and I ask her to ask the questions, and then I have to respond saying, okay, oh, it's this or it's that. That also helps you, because when they ask you a question right away, you have to think about it and then explain it in your own words. So it really helps you make sure you understand the concepts and have everything down as well. So that's also a big help.
Yeah, to go off of that, studying with someone who doesn't have prior knowledge of what you are studying can actually be helpful, because then you're forced to explain it to someone who knows nothing about it. So it's really a way to test your understanding of the material and how in-depth that goes. So I would recommend, if you can have someone who's maybe taken the same class as you before, then study with them. But if not, then maybe studying with your parents who don't know anything about the classes that you're taking, maybe, or like a younger sibling who hasn't gotten there yet, then studying with them is a great way to go.
I think the one thing that we have to be careful when doing that, though, is I fall into that trap, is that you don't go into a concept specifically like the date or the actual name of this event, and so you start talking about it generally, and then when you go to the quiz or the exam, you're like, shoot, I don't know what I did, or what was the actual thing? I don't know. Oh, I forgot about it. I only know general. So it's good to keep that in mind as well.
If there's a subject that you know someone who knows a lot better about it than you do, go and converse with your betters. It will probably be humiliating the first couple times you say something awkward in Spanish, or you associate a character with something that totally didn't even happen to them. But it will only happen a couple times before you really start to catch on, and you will better yourself so much by doing that. I actually need to do it way more than I do, but you will definitely make yourself a lot better by doing that.
Great suggestions. Okay, I'm hoping that our listeners are feeling more confident already with these great suggestions. They're very practical, very doable. So the Nhs Tutoring Hours are happening every week, like you said, and they're for the whole Kolbe community, right? If they are enrolled with Kolbe, then they have a student account that they can use to access the peer tutoring, because that's the account they need to use to sign in and join the online classroom for the tutoring. So
yeah, they have to be able to have an Adobe, or to be able to get into Adobe, they have to have a Kolbe email address, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So even like in your case, Josephine, you're not taking online classes, but you have a Kolbe student account that you're able to communicate with everybody that way. So, okay, cool. So as students are preparing for finals, they can come and talk to you all in the tutoring rooms. Looking ahead for NHS, so you had an induction at the beginning of the school year, you had one just recently. Do you anticipate doing 1 or 2 classes a year?
We're only going to be doing 1 per year. We did 2 this year to build it, And I think you're allowed to do 2 your first year, but I think after that, you're only allowed to do 1 per year. It's still up in the air whether or not it's going to be in the fall or the spring. And a lot of that has to do with grade reporting on the homeschool end, because sometimes their transcripts are not quite up to date when some of the live students' transcripts are up to date. So we have to kind of figure out what makes the most sense for the whole school as far as when to invite people. Like I know some of the people who were inducted last night were basically eligible the first go around, but their transcripts weren't ready yet. So we didn't know they were eligible.
Right.
So that's kind of a hiccup there. But hopefully it'll become a little more smooth as we progress. And I know these girls have a lot of ideas for all the other ways they want to serve the Kolbe community. They've got some, so I will let them share about that part.
Yeah, definitely. So regarding projects, we've been like all over the map, to be honest, like discussing so many different things that we could do. And we're all super excited because especially there's so many amazing students in Kolbe. And I personally wish, and I think you girls agree as well, that I could get to know all these students better and interact with them and learn some of their talents, learn more about them personally as an individual. And so I think we really want to focus on these projects, somehow finding a way to kind of create, you could say, our own baby, or like create this project that we love, that we all are interested in, but also in the process create good relationships. And so I think, as I was saying before, there's so many talented students in Kolbe, and I think if we used all of our talents and put it all together, we could definitely create so many amazing things, or somehow, create a better society, you could say. But yeah, I think we were talking about, you guys mentioned some of the things we were talking about as well. About one thing I really was interested in was in doing a Kolbe camp. That's probably going to take a few years, but to do more in-person activities, because I personally would love that, to get to know each person individually and actually like put a name to a face in person.
Sure.
So I don't know if you girls want to mention some of the other projects we were talking about as well.
Yeah, so a lot of my ideas come from, like Martina said, building social connections with the other students, because I've shared classes with them for years, but I feel like I barely know some of them. Like I definitely recognize the name, but I don't know their interests or what their families are like. So a lot of my ideas are centering around that, like having social nights for a certain grade level where we maybe play a game together or watch a movie. So I am really excited to work on a lot of the ideas that will bring us all closer as a Kolbe community.
I believe we were also talking about, we were discussing a science fair. I know Kolbe was trying to do that a couple years ago, I believe, and it never really went through. So that would be an interesting way to see if we could redo a science fair, get other projects, and that would be a very exciting experience, I think, to try and do that virtually or anything along those lines. I think that would be a fun adventure to do. Anything along the lines of writing, I think Kolbe really stresses skill in writing. I think it'd be fun to do some sort of community, some sort of get-together club where we could really expand on those skills and get speakers, or we were talking a lot about having guest speakers in a lot of these areas and really get outside expertise.
It was really cool because in our last NHS meeting, we decided to ask all the other members as well, like, do you guys have any ideas? And then together we started brainstorming about all these things we could do. And suddenly we had like this really good list of things that are possible in the future. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is so good. Like just discussing amongst us, we were kind of limited, but we had this huge pool of ideas that had great opportunity. And so I'm just so excited for that. And just shows as well how amazing these members are and how like lucky we are to have members that are not only good in academics, but also in other aspects of their life. So
we were talking about publishing a book. That was the other thing that I liked.
Yeah.
How neat.
I'm like, only Kolbe students, literally.
Yep.
Well, I can see you bringing both your academic success, placing it in service to your Kolbe community. That's really inspiring and admirable. I congratulate you all and thank you all for doing that. That's really heartening to see. It's not surprising, but still very much appreciated. And I respect you all so much for stepping up and taking these leadership roles as you have and getting this NHS chapter off to a great start. And Mrs. Mammola for spearheading this, and your faculty advisor team. I know everybody puts in a lot of time on this to make it a success, and we so appreciate that. I wanted to speak to the point about the grade reporting for the homeschool side, the families who make use of the homeschool services and are thinking that this sounds like something they would want to be a part of. We've done some episodes on grade reporting, and there are a lot of resources. The advisors have been hosting Zoom meetings and coffee chats and providing all sorts of resources on the grade reporting process. And of course, you can schedule appointments or attend these office hours about grade reporting. And we've heard about the merits of getting those grade reports turned in. I, in years past, have done them all at the end of the year, but I'm intent this year on turning in mine at semester and then at the end of the year. One reason being this type of deal when we need to have them in sooner than later. And so resources are very plentiful for how to accomplish that. It's not as daunting as it first appears. So those are available. We will put some links in the show notes for those. We'll also link to recordings with some of our other fabulous Kolbe students. We've had a number of episodes where we've gotten to know a few of them, and it's always a joy to talk to Kolbe students. Was there anything else that y'all wanted to add?
Yes, I would add just a couple thoughts on the application process. When if you are invited to do the NHS and they ask you for your qualifications, put down every single thing you've done. Every time that you do something in your community, no matter how small, put it down. No matter what thing you're interested in, put it down. Because all of this is going to build up your picture as an individual. And that's what Kolbe wants, is individuals who are willing to put forth those things that make them unique and make them interesting and harness those talents to move Kolbe forward. So put everything down.
And I have to say as well, during the application progress, it's really nice because you can see what you've done in the past. And a lot of times you may feel, oh, all these other people are doing so much. And when you look at it, you're like, wow, I have been doing something with my life. And then also just writing the essay, you realize too more about yourself. It's like, oh, these characteristics, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. This big aspect of my life changed me or made a big impact on me. So I feel like not only is it, a great opportunity to become a part of something else, but you also really do learn a lot more about yourself, which is really great.
Sure.
I can add that as the mom of a senior who's in the middle of college applications right now, doing this earlier and gathering all this information and having it all organized is only to your advantage. And anytime you're applying for anything and you have to write an essay and you have to think of all, like Martina was saying, thinking of all of my strengths and weaknesses and learning about yourself, the earlier you do it, the better, because then you can just crank those things out.
And the earlier you start, the more things that you'll probably remember along the way. So if you give yourself like maybe 2 weeks to fill out the application, at the week and a half mark, you'll probably remember, oh, I was in this service opportunity and I forgot to mention that. So just give yourself as much time and it will only help you in the end.
Other thing, this one belongs in around study tips. This one is for all the procrastinators out there. If you are looking at a project that you want to do, then here's what you're going to do. You're going to look and you're going to decide, can I do this really quickly in the next 10 minutes or so? Can I do this really quickly in the next half hour or so? The things that can get done really fast, right then and there, you do it. Sit down, take your paper, pencil, sit down right there and do it. Get that out of the way. Because those small tasks will build up.
Yeah.
Don't put it aside till the end of the day. Get it done real fast right then and there.
Good point.
I think it's also rooted in being realistic with yourself, because a lot of times I'm like, I'm going to get this amount of stuff done, and then I only get 2 things done, and then I'm miserable, and I think I can't do school, and it's terrible. And so I've learned throughout the years, the best way to approach it is be realistic. Okay, this is probably going to take this amount of time, and then be like, okay, then do you have enough time the next day? And everything builds upon each other. So once you're realistic with yourself, your life just becomes so much easier.
Yeah, that's so true. Things take longer than we think they will. Yeah. I like that suggestion for the procrastinators because it takes longer sometimes to keep track of what I have to do than it takes to just do the things that I have to do. So then I have less to keep track of that way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for families who are listening to this, who have students who are not yet to the NHS age, who are not yet high schoolers, but are approaching that, it would be an ideal time to sort of make a practice of keeping track of the accomplishments, achievements, awards, things like that. Keep a list going, just make it, kind of build it in so that you add to the list as it goes along. It's so much easier than going back later and finding them all. Okay, cool. Such a delight to get to know you each a little bit and look for you. Then when the newsletter comes out, I think, oh, she was such a delight to talk to, and I wonder what she's up to now. So I really appreciate all of you coming to talk to us today and all that you have offered to us and to the Kolbe families. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
If you haven't already, subscribe to the Kolbe Cast in your favorite podcast app to make sure you don't miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, pray for us. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam.